What if I told you that surrogacy is evil? Surrogacy is anti-Christian and anti-biblical. And the surrogates you're thinking of in the Bible ain't what surrogacy is in America today. They have nothing in common. Being pro-life, being a Christian requires you to stand against some of the insane big fertility surrogacy injustices happening in America. You know what I'm talking about. Surrogacy. It means two homosexual dudes want a baby, so they rent a woman's uterus and maybe they purchase her gametes and then they implant a baby in there and then they buy the baby. Yeah, sounds like child trafficking. Wait a second. This is the surrogacy industry in America. It is not by and large a way for a loving Christian dad and a loving Christian mom who are no longer able to have children to have their sister or aunt gestate the baby. And isn't that just beautiful? By and large, that's not what's happening in America. We're responding today to a viral, disgusting video with our friend Katy Faust commenting on this video of a baby being placed on the chest of a hairy, autogynephilic dude who wants to be a mommy. Who could have thought that the conservatives of the 60s were right when they said redefining marriage is going to redefine parenthood as we know it in America? Who could have guessed? Buckle up for our conversation today with Katy Faust. This is the Seth Gruber Show. Katy, welcome to the show today. Talk about a rising star. Goodness, I feel like every time I'm on social media, I see an article or you're speaking somewhere, or more often than not, it's other people who start sounding like little Katys. And I'm like, wait a second, someone's reading Katy Faust. Someone's having Katy on their podcast. You're one of our show favorites, and we wanted to have you back today. This sort of last, yes, I always joke about how I lose donors when I have you on, but the audience of the podcast really likes to listen to our conversations, even if they don't fully agree. And hopefully today we have an example. We're going to talk about something today that is kind of it's just this like in your face example that doesn't require words or modus ponens syllogisms to bolster your conclusion that surrogacy and the IVF big fertility industry is wrong. It just screams it. And so we're going to show this in just 1 second. For you guys listening, you're going to watch this and you're going to be like, good Lord. And you're going to start donating to Katy's organization, Them Before Us. But for new listeners to my show, Katy, who are like, well, this is weird. Like, why is Katy so awesome? Give us a brief primer on who you are and what Them Before Us does.
Well, I'm a fan of Seth Gruber. That's probably the first thing that you need to know. And what I love is the no holds barred, like we're just going to say it like it is. We're going to take the gloves off approach to what is, as you always rightly refer to, the culture of death. And it's usually the culture of death for children. I mean, we're experiencing, threats to life on a lot of different fronts, but it is the most vulnerable among us. The children who are really being threatened by this culture of death, because the children are the ones that do not have the ability, capacity, or means to defend themselves. So I'm a fan of Seth Gruber. You can start donating to him. And the ones that have some questions about why he is campaigning against abortion, and he's also so highly critical of big fertility and IVF, we're going to answer that question for you today. And then you're going to give him even more money because he was right and you were wrong. And it's okay. You guys can just recognize it, come to terms with it, reform your life, and we're all going to move forward together. So what I do at Them Before Us is, I think, a compliment to a lot of what Seth is doing. And that is, he is solely devoted to defending children's right to life and going wherever the threats to children may be, whether it is the baby taking industry of abortion or the baby making industry of big fertility. And what we do at Them Before Us is we defend children's secondary right, their primary right. Like all of us, they have a right to life. But children also have a right to be known and loved by both people responsible for their existence. They have a right to their own mother and father. And when we defend that right, we actually get the correct answer to every question about marriage and family, from the definition of marriage to when divorce is permissible, to how to respond to modern families, to how to reject properly reproductive technologies that victimize children's right to life and violate their right to their mother and father. It tells us exactly what to think about surrogacy, and that is, it is wrong in 100% of cases because it always forces children to sacrifice for adults, and it gives us the proper understanding of adoption as a child-centric institution, in contrast to reproductive technologies, which are an adult-centric marketplace. So what Them Before Us does is really sort of an extension of a lot of what you're hearing Seth do, which is standing firmly on the rights and well-being of children, regardless of what adult it offends when it comes to their right to life. At Them Before Us, what we are doing is we are standing firm on children's right to their mother and father, and standing firmly on that, regardless of what adult it offends. So because we defend children's right to their mother and father, that makes us staunch opponents of surrogacy in 100% of cases, regardless of what family formation the child goes home to. It makes us massive critics of IVF, which only allows 92 to 97% of lab created babies to be born alive. It recognizes that if you genuinely care about children, you must be hypercritical of big fertility in almost all of its forms.
So there's a lot to big fertility. There's quite a bit, and we recently released an episode on the Seth Gruber Show, as people are listening to this recently, on Big Eva, big evangelicalism. There's big tech, there's big pharma, but there's also big fertility, and it is not by and large an industry to help married mom and married dad who struggle with infertility have children by creating one baby at a time in a lab with her gametes and his gametes, so the child still is being raised by their biological parents. No. Okay, if you think that that is how big fertility is profiting and sustaining itself by and large, you are asleep. You have your head in the ground. And we've been seeing some of the recent numbers, Katy, of the rise, this is not going to shock anyone, the rise in non-procreative sexual relationships using big fertility as a way to get children. And the conservative movement needs clarity on this. For goodness freaking gracious. You've got Dave Rubin, okay, who, like, anyone who's gonna, like, defend liberty and free speech and against the totalitarian takeover of our elections and the silencing of churches, like, okay, I'm grateful for some of the things Dave Rubin said, but like when he tweets out a photo with some dude he calls his husband, but a husband can't have a husband because a husband can only be a husband if he has a wife. Some dude that he says he's married to, with a photo of a baby in a uterus, and you go, well, I don't think that's coming out of your urethra. And then on Twitter, Katy, libs of TikTok, Blaze TV, PragerU, all saying congrats. And I'm like, oh boy, we need Katy Faust to come do some breakout sessions and talks to big conservative organizations. So why are conservatives so split on this? Why do they get mad at you? What is that? What's the operative thing going on that makes you the bad guy?
I'll tell you one word, and it's self-interest. Self-interest. It's very easy for anybody to be principled until it runs up against their own self-interest. And so we actually saw that. I would say that obviously those examples of massive conservative platforms congratulating PragerU, all of which have, in essence, in the past said, well, marriage is the cornerstone of society and kids need moms and dads. But as soon as it's somebody in their world and on their side who is creating two intentionally motherless children through a commercial process, suddenly it runs up against their own self-interest. After all, Dave Rubin has a show on the Blaze TV, and he's done videos for PragerU. And obviously he's advancing a lot of the things that Libs for TikTok is decrying. And so the thing about principles is they're only principles if you do them even when it's hard for you. And that is not something we've seen a lot of conservative organizations do. Another point, yesterday, Barry Weiss, who I'm a fan, like Barry Weiss's podcast comes up and it's the first one that I'll listen to. I think she's a killer reporter. I'd like try not to covet her writing abilities, but I fail. Like she is so smart and wonderful. I appreciate everything that she stands for in terms of like free speech and, sanity when it comes to a lot of the cultural issues that we're having today. But She says, "Hey, here's my wife, Nellie Bowles, who's pregnant with our second child." And I said, "Look, I appreciate Barry Weiss, but I am sorry. This is the second intentionally fatherless child that they have created. Children have a right to their mother and father. And we need to be consistent about that, even when the people that we really like are victimizing kids in that way." Now, that's a hard position to take because it's going to make you choose. You will either choose social acceptance with those adults that you like, or you will choose child protection. Make your choice. You will have to choose. You cannot have both. You will not get the social affirmation from these large conservative organizations, from your friends who are going through the reproductive technologies or maybe going through the no fault divorce. I mean, you're going to have to choose. Are you going to value your relationship and your conception in their life, or are you going to speak up on behalf of kids? You don't get to have both. And there are very few prominent conservatives and conservative organizations that are picking the right side.
Yep. Wow. Oh gosh, Katie. I can't wait for you to be at CPAC on stage. That needs to happen. Okay, so we're gonna show a clip here, and then I have some devil's advocate arguments, and I love to try to do that to you because I know what the so-called conservative pro-lifer is thinking. I can literally play. I can hear the objections coming in my own mind when you're making your case for children's right to be raised by the two individuals responsible for their existence. I always hear the objections and I disagree with them, but I love to just have you rip those answers because people need to hear it. But before we do that, we have a clip here that my team's going to pull up right now because this is going viral right now. It went viral last week on social media, and it is so hard to watch that I actually didn't watch it because I knew what it was about. Okay, I knew what it was about because I read the caption. I didn't even watch it, Katie, until my own team posted it on my Instagram. And then I'm like, maybe I should watch the whole clip now that it's on my Instagram. But I knew what was in it, and it was so difficult to watch. I'm not even going to introduce it. Play clip.
Oh no, I put it back on her. I know, but I thought I had it back on. Oh, he went there. Oh, right. Now she's chilling. With the blanket. I'm clean. Here we go. Oh, there she goes. Oh, yeah. She's so cool. She's mad. She's so sweet. Yeah. Dressing up at the same time and no pulses.
Oh, baby. Okay, so what was that?
Yeah. Well, that was children as accessories for a man who's cosplaying as a woman. That's what it is. As one of my, mentions in Twitter said, this is now an infant, emotional support animal on behalf of a man with a sexual fetish. That's really what this is. It is, a child that has been denied their primary right to their mother so that an adult can have something that they want. An adult who we have no idea may or may not be the biological father. It doesn't even matter to big fertility, right? What we know is this man created a contract and insisted that a child lose their genetic mother, right? Because I'm sure this child was created through an egg donation, and then starved the child of the bond with the only person the baby knew on the day that they were born. And that is what you see in this video. Watch this baby. Look at how normally you put the baby on the mother's chest, and everybody that's been a mother knows this. Everybody that has been the husband of a mother knows this. The baby is crying, they're distressed, they're being weighed, they're being washed, they're being cleaned, and then you put it on the mother's chest, and peace, because the mother is the only thing the baby knows the day that they are born. Yeah, skin to skin contact is beneficial, but mothers soothe the baby. The birth mother soothes the baby. And look at that poor baby's quivering chin. Nothing about that hairy chest, pheromones man is giving the baby the comfort that they desperately need. And yet everybody in that room anyway is just celebrating this as some kind of unmitigated progressive beauty, but it's not. It is the most pagan, backwards, transgressive tragedy that you're going to see on film anywhere.
That's exactly right. Nailed it. Oh my goodness. We're gonna clip that. That was so. why is this dude on a hospital table laying down vertically as if he just had a child come out of his urethra? I guess he really had to lay down because that childbirth out of his penis, that really hurt, right? He's recovering, right, from the physical labor, I guess. Like what the heck is going on in this clip? This is disgusting. You have cited, Katy, science from biological psychiatry that I wanted to quote your own findings that you've reported on in your own book that showed that maternal separation was a major physiological stressor for infants. Just to bring a little bit of science, follow the science to what you're saying right now. And this article says that humans are the only mammals that practice such maternal neonate separation, but its physiological impact on the baby has been unknown until now. Researchers measured heart rate variability in 2-day-old sleeping babies for 1 hour each during skin-to-skin contact with mother and alone in a cot next to the mother's bed. Neonatal autonomic activity was 176% higher and quiet sleep 86% lower during maternal separation compared to skin-to-skin contact. So what does that mean?
Yeah. What it means is, okay. First of all, it's very hard to get studies and data points on this because it's actually inhumane to test mother separation on human infants. Like there's an ethical
Right.
prohibition against seeing whether or not maternal presence matters to children because it's considered too cruel to actually conduct a test on infants. Okay.
You're saying the lack of data is itself proof that
That's
we know
exactly
it's
right.
wrong.
That's exactly right. But what we know very clearly is that what is it? So babies have no ability to soothe themselves or regulate themselves. What Erica Komisar, who I think is the motherhood queen, like the woman that really understands motherhood better than anything else. She wrote a book called Being There, The Importance of Mother Presence from Birth to 3. And she talks about how the way she would say it is babies don't even have a central nervous system. They are not able to regulate their own emotions, to regulate, their bodies, their physiological responses. You cannot do that as a human until somebody else does it for you. Mothers are the central nervous system for the babies. How do they do that? They do it through constant touch and constant nurturing. And you can say, okay, well, a man can do that too. No, they don't. Men's brains are different and their bodies are different. They don't respond to infants the same way. Women have a lower tolerance for infant cries. That means they respond more quickly when babies signal distress. And how do they do that? They do it by grabbing the baby dozens of times, multiple times, an hour, putting the baby close to them, wrapping them, swaddling them, wearing them all day long. And what does this do for children? Well, this is what it does. When a baby is in distress because they are tired or hungry or afraid or wet, the cortisol goes up, the stress hormone goes up. The baby is literally incapable of dropping their own cortisol. And if that remains at high alert, it actually can lead to inflammation later in life. Okay, so that childhood stress, if the childhood stress doesn't come down, we actually have studies that show that this will lead to higher increase in physical issues, right? Autoimmune disorders, even more likely to catch the common cold. Okay. So your body has got to regulate. You have to drop that cortisol level, but the baby's incapable of doing that themselves. The only thing that will drop babies' cortisol levels is oxytocin. But babies can't release oxytocin on their own. Oxytocin is released only through skin-to-skin contact, and it is most dramatically and pronounced release when it's with the biological mother. Oftentimes through breastfeeding, very often through that skin-to-skin contact that happens often immediately right after birth. That is why babies calm down so quickly with their mother, not the hairy-chested man that's cosplaying with the perfect braids and makeup because he's very clearly wanting an Instagram moment, not really because he's there to bond with the baby. And so what is going on in this picture is an absolute tragedy. It is not just sad, it is actually damaging to the child.
Katy, how much longer till that dude forces that baby to suck on his nipple? And I'm actually not joking, because if you already are so deluded that you think you're a woman and that you could be a woman. By the way, did you notice this is not okay? Let's be very clear. You saw the clip, guys, but if you're on podcast audio, let Katy and I be very clear. That was not Dave Rubin putting a baby on his chest, which Katy and I would get just as riled up about. Right? Like that baby needs a mother. But we're saying is we'd like to thank our friends and sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show today, Every Life Diaper Company, Every Life Diaper, everylife.com, everylife.com, the only pro-life diaper company in America. And actually, did you know this? The fastest growing diaper company in America. Okay. So yeah, you want to give your money to people that have their values aligned with yours, but you also want to give your money to people who are good business leaders and they're growing up companies that are successful. Every major diaper company in America, except Every Life, rhetorically or financially supports the abortion industry. This is what has happened when good people with good values like you and I give our dollars to people who hate us, who want to throw us into gulags, okay? Who hate everything you stand for. You should not be spending your money with people who hate you and everything you stand for and represent. We take back a culture by funding the things we want. So if you don't like what you're seeing happening, give your money to people who want to rebuild this culture for Christianity, the family, and the next generation. Everylife.com is where you do that for the babies. Give your money to everylife.com. Promo code Seth10 for 10% off your first order and let them know that we sent you. And they give diapers to pregnancy centers. They donate some of the diapers to save more babies. This is what a culture of life looks like. Thank you, Every Life, for supporting the Seth Gruber Show. Well, at least Dave Rubin knows he's a dude.
No, this is this is a guy with perfectly manicured nails. I mean, he obviously, the truth is, this was probably a C-section so that he could be camera ready. And it's not happening at 4 a.m. in the morning, right? He had a manicure, full on, like gel nails. He's got perfect makeup, braided hair, hairy chest. Now, yeah, there's a possibility that he could try to chest feed this baby, and I'll tell you why. Because it's very obvious that this guy transitioned post-puberty. Usually, when a child has persisting gender dysphoria, okay, like as a child, they would be put on puberty blockers and they would not necessarily develop the way that this man has developed.
That's right.
What this guy probably is what most post-pubertal men who transition are, and that is an autogynephile. That is a man who is sexually aroused to the image of himself as a woman. And the idea for these are the guys that can be the most vicious when it comes to protecting transgender rights and invading female-only spaces.
But Katy, no. I was told there's no underlying relationship whatsoever between autogynephilia and pedophilia. Respond.
Well, how many studies are we? How do you study this kind of thing is number one, right? So the social science is very challenging on a lot of these things. Do you study the behavior? Do you study the identity? And then how do you capture these people? Are you going to find them at random? No. If you're going to study it, it's going to be the people that are volunteering or recruited. And I'll tell you what, those people know that what you're doing is a politically aimed study, and you're going to get very different outcomes from actually studying the outcomes of children who are victimized through these issues. So we don't even have the studies to talk about this. What we do know is that autogynephiles are genuinely sexually aroused by female replicating behaviors and situations. Okay, so you've got autogynephiles. Yes, that's it. Like you are aroused by the idea of yourself as a woman.
If they are, how much longer until they think that they also have the right to breastfeed?
Yes,
and
exactly.
Just to bring some clarity to this, guys, if you've been listening to my show for a while, you listened to the talk that we're about to take on a church tour next year in pulpits all around America if the church is ready for it. And I gave it at Jack Hibbs Church, but it was a Thursday evening. It was an optional event. It wasn't a church service. And I called it All Human Conflict is Ultimately Theological.
Yeah.
And I was reading you. I was reading Nancy Pearcey. I was preparing a lot. It's not even a pro-life talk. It's way bigger than that. And we're going to be taking it on the road at the White Rose Resistance next year, Katy. But I made the point that last year in 2023, the CDC said that healthcare providers need to help men who think they're women take a drug to create a substance to leak out of their male tit so that they can chest feed. Guys, this is coming from the Centers for Disease Control. Like, okay, whoa. This is not just like some weird phenomenon that we're seeing in, just 10% of the culture. This is now coming from the federal government and the highest institutions of power, not just normalizing it, but funding it and actually integrating it into our society. So that clip, there's so much to say there. But I have another question for you, Katy. Why not just why not just go to moms who have 1-year-olds, who have decided that they don't really want to be mothers anymore, and just buy those children? I'm sure that would be legal. If right? I mean, if it's okay to do this prenatally, why not why not this side of the womb too? Katie, why? But are conservatives comfortable with that? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, actually, that is a major area where we can highlight the absurdity of surrogacy because so first of all, let me just say that before I was a mom, I was the assistant director at the largest Chinese adoption agency in the world. One of the things I was responsible for was compliance with international, federal, and state level standards. Okay. So, one of the things that was probably the biggest red line when it comes to ethics of adoption is money could never flow from the intended adoptive parents to the birth parents or the genetic parents. If money was being paid by the adoptive parents to the birth mother, it was no longer adoption. It was trafficking. It was buying babies. Now, in surrogacy and big fertility, it is routine to separate children from their mother and father, for kids to go home with an unrelated adult. But in this industry, it is built upon direct payments from intended parents to genetic parents. Nobody's donating sperm or egg. You are buying sperm, you are buying egg, you are renting a womb. And what are you paying for? You are paying for those people to relinquish their parental claim to their own genetic offspring. So this industry is categorically child trafficking from an adoption standpoint. So why don't we punish it like that? And the answer comes down to the timing of the contract. Okay. So we actually have situations where people have been punished for child trafficking in the name of building families through surrogacy. What was the problem there? The problem was not that money was going from intended parents to genetic parents or the birth mother. The problem was not that they were taking home an unrelated child. The problem was the contract was signed after conception, not before conception. That was the problem. Okay, so the timing of the contract is the only line that determines, oh, this is family building. Oh, no, this is baby trafficking. And you can look up the case of Teresa Erickson, who was the fertility lawyer who actually had this sort of racket going on where she was selling surrogate born babies that she had pre-implanted and started the gestation process. And then she found intended parents for them. That's completely illegal. If she had signed the contract before conception, it would have been totally legal. I mean, this is such a sham industry. It is in every conceptual way of thinking about what this is, either from the adoption perspective, from the technical perspective. This is child trafficking. And the only reason we don't recognize it as such is what you just said. There's absolute institutional capture from all the different highest levels of our institutions, from the CDC to a lot of the pediatric organizations to the OBGYNs who are now offering guidance and assistance on chest feeding. What we have is absolute institutional capture in favor of the people that are promoting sexual identity as the ultimate good to the detriment of children everywhere.
Guys, this is why we have Katy Faust on the show. And this is why I rebranded the podcast, for goodness gracious, from the Unaborted to the Seth Gruber Show, because I'm not going to stay in my little pro-life lane and refuse to explain to you, the listener, the culture, the every once in a while viral Instagram reel that might help the culture think differently if they listen to me and Katie, that all of these issues are interconnected in a very serious way. And yes, we're going to tear down the high places. We're going to end abortion. It's the litmus test of the republic. It's the sacrament of Satan, but it's all connected. And as I said once to you when you came on the show, and I think in a thought in the spur of the Holy Spirit, actually, I said, if abortion is healthcare, then selling children is capitalism. And so you see, if we can kill the baby in the womb, right, because they don't have a right to life, well, then why can't you sell them in the womb? Do you see? If you don't get the right to life right, you won't get any other rights right. It was actually our tolerance of child killing that has sort of normalized and put on steroids all the various iterations of the culture of death today. So I want you to think about what Katie just said, guys. The only reason why some of these actions of surrogacy are not considered child trafficking is because the baby's still in the uterus. Now, if you tried to buy an infant, right, if this weird autogynephilic, pedophilic leaning weirdo wanted to go to a mom of a 9-month-old baby and say, here's some cash, can I get your kid? They could both go to prison. the mom and him, for doing an illegal transaction of a person, an image bearer, a human. But if it's a fetus, I hope you guys see how this all goes together. Okay, but you know what, Katy? This is not happening that large scale. There's some weirdos doing it. This is not the norm. It's certainly not going to become normalized. It's not like children in New York have ever been removed from their biological father and placed with a strange male that had an intent to parent. That's never happened. What are you talking about, Katy?
Well, just to go back to what you're saying, like if you can kill a child in the womb, anything else is permissible. And somebody even did that in my Twitter mentions this morning. They're like, "Oh, you don't want babies through surrogacy? Well, I thought that you guys were the party that loved babies, and I thought you wanted everybody to have more children and blah blah blah." I'm like, yeah, it's so funny how the people that think that babies shouldn't die also think that they shouldn't be sold for profit. It's weird how those two things go together, isn't it? But that's the reality. Like, you have to stand on children's right to life. And it actually is the foundation of all pro-child, pro-life ethic when it comes to all these different issues. And you're exactly right. You have to get the pro-life issue right. And you also have to get the marriage and family issue right. And, like I often will decry these, my Barry Weiss, post yesterday, like, I appreciate Barry Weiss. Nobody should be creating fatherless children, even the ones that are promoting free speech. And someone's like, "What are you doing? You're alienating all of our allies." I'm sorry, but I mean, like, what are you allying for? Like, what do you have?
Yeah.
And then somebody else is like, "Oh, you just don't want the gays to get kids. I never see you talking about no-fault divorce." I'm like, well, that's because you're new here. I talk about no-fault divorce all the time. Welcome to my children's rights nonprofit that says that everybody,
Yeah.
single, married, gay, straight, fertile, and infertile, need to sacrifice for kids. And so, yes, this is a holistic issue. Yeah, we have to protect children everywhere. Yes, a child-centric pro-life ethic is going to mean that you will have an opinion and probably lose friends over an awful lot of issues, not just abortion. And that's exactly how it should be, because if you don't do it, kids are going to be victimized. And I mean, if you're a Christian, child protection is like the mandate. Child protection is actually what has characterized Christians from the first century. And if we are going to forsake protecting children just because we are facing these new and novel and somewhat confusing technological innovations, I'm sorry, but you are not caring for orphans in their distress. You're inflicting distress on orphans because your social acceptance matters more to you than their rights.
Yep. Wow. Um, One thing we're gonna let you go soon because you have to. We know that you're busy. One thing that it's important to remind people is that surrogacy, unless you're unless you're literally like having historic surrogacy, which is like, hey, go sleep with my concubine. Okay, like, unless, which is not usually happening in America. So precluding historical surrogacy, guys, um, excluding that, this always assumes IVF. This always assumes IVF. So it's like, okay, we're talking about surrogacy right now, and we're not going to jump into the whole IVF thing right now. We have older episodes on that. I've done it individually. We've had Katy on, but like, that's part of this whole formula too, which is like over 90% of babies conceived in test tubes through IVF are never born. And you're almost always creating multiple children. It's not like the act of sex where you have no control over how many children are created. You're planning how many children to create to hopefully get your one. So as I say, their siblings become sacrificial lambs on the altar of your fertility. But Katy, maybe one devil's advocate here before we let you go. So the Christian pro-lifer listening to this, right? And I mean, I had some people in my church I grew up in that when the first time I had you on, woo, they were not happy. And, they might say, well, wait a second. Let's say it's just my sister, but it's me, but me and my wife, it's our gammies, but then it's my sister, and she's just doing it because she's so loving, and we couldn't have kids naturally. Come on, Katy, I thought you were pro-life. How could you oppose that?
Couple things. There's so much ground to cover here. I'm going to refer you to two articles that I wrote. The first one is my natural law case against surrogacy, and it's called the Conservative Pro-Life Case Against Surrogacy that I published in the Federalist. That is just all social science related to protecting children's right to life and right to their mother and father, and why surrogacy is always harmful to kids. So that's sort of grounded in a natural law authority. And then I actually wrote an article for Christianity Today, which kudos for them for publishing it. But that was my biblical case against surrogacy. 4 biblical principles why Christians can never support surrogacy, even for the best case scenario that you just described. It's a husband and wife, it's their own gametes. Maybe there's no children that are discarded. Maybe it's her sister that's carrying, so there's no money exchanged. What could be wrong with that? What's wrong with that is the baby is going to have the exact same response as the one that was set on the hairy-chested transgender man. Just because the baby's genetically related to the intended mother and the intended father, they are still biological strangers. They are still 2 people among 8 billion that baby doesn't know. And it is the unrelated surrogate aunt that is going to drop that baby's cortisol levels and soothe that baby. The surrogate is the one the baby wants. Can the baby get over it? Well, you can ask all of the adoptees who have been saddled with increased identity issues, that have had higher rates of externalizing disorders, who have struggled more in school, despite the fact that they are raised by parents who are wealthier, better educated, and statistically spend more time with them. It seems as though that maternal bond has long-lasting, lifelong effects for children. And to inflict that intentionally just because you want something is an injustice that no Christian should be a part of.
That's right. Amen. But Katy, Mother Mary was a surrogate.
Yeah, let's have a little chat about that, about all the surrogates in Scripture. So let's just talk about what surrogacy really is. Surrogacy is when you splice one woman, mother, into 3 purchasable and optional women: the genetic mother who gives her egg, the birth mother who gestates the child, and the social mother who raises them. So surrogacy always removes at least the birth mother, oftentimes the genetic mother, and sometimes the child goes home to a motherless home. Tell me how many of those cases there are in Scripture. There's 0. If you're talking about Mary, if you're talking about Bilhah, if you're talking about Hagar, we call those surrogate pregnancies because we're idiots and we're trying to advance an anti-child narrative using Scripture. But none of those are surrogate pregnancies. All of those babies, Ishmael, Jesus, the 7 or 8 siblings of Jacob that didn't grow up in the legit marriage, none of those babies lost their genetic mother, their birth mother, or their social mother. They grew up with their 100% mother. There is no surrogacy in the Bible, and you need to shut people down who are using it. I mean, this is the do not take God's name in vain situation. It's not about whether you say GD. It is whether you use the authority of Scripture to advance things that God hates. There is no surrogacy in the Bible.
Wow. Good for you, Katy. Good for you. I knew that you would smack that down immediately, but that was so satisfying to listen
Ridiculous.
to. Last question, and then you have a meeting. Where does this all go if nothing changes?
Yeah.
If this man, autogynephilic, pedophilic, wannabe a mommy with breasts, becomes more normalized, it's protected, and the slippery slope of the culture of death does not stop.
Yeah.
Where are we in 20 years?
It goes to artificial wombs. That's where it's going. And you and I did an episode about that. That actually prompted me to write an article about it in Public Discourse that came out last month. So you can Google Katy Faust, Artificial Wombs, Public Discourse, where I talk about how absolutely dystopic it will be. Factory floors of children. It will be a level of child designing and buying and selling that we've never seen before as a species. And so we have to get surrogacy right now, because it is only going to get darker and more twisted the longer that we allow ourselves to exist in this moral confusion. This is the fundamental child protection issue of our time. And you, Christian brother or sister, are charged with child protection.
Good. Amen. As Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, the ultimate test for a moral society is the kind of world that it leaves to its children. Katy, thembeforeus.com, her book, Them Before Us, her other book, How to Raise Christian Kids in a Woke City. I know I didn't get it right. And I think you might be announcing something soon around the corner here. You are always welcome back on the Seth Gruber Show. Guys, go support Them Before Us. Katy, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys for tuning in today. Woo, electric episode. Okay. Go listen to the old interviews with Katy Faust if you want to hear more about how to defend children's rights this side of the womb as well. Okay. And seriously, if you have extra cash, go make a donation to them before us. We love their organization. So grateful for them. Go to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, give the show a rating and review. Let us know what you think. Okay. Really helps us reach more people. Share this episode. I know I always say that, but like it's because we talk about a lot of things that a lot of other people don't talk about. And this is an important episode for the church and the conservative movement that seemingly doesn't know where to land on this issue and certainly doesn't have clarity on it. Go to Rumble and subscribe for when YouTube kills me. We are so appreciative of you guys. We are now the fastest growing pro-life organization in America. And this podcast is part of equipping, mobilizing, bringing clarity, and inspiring you to get involved in the fight. So go to thewhiterose.life and join us as an ally at $35 a month. And you get a battle box and you join our digital community. We got like courses in there. We got like a pro-life masterclass coming out. It's all for you to equip you for this fight in these propitious moment and time that we're living in. And our book club is $70 a month, thewhiterose.life. We read books together. You hang out live with me. It's super fun. This is going to be quite the year. And if we don't turn something around soon, this November election is going to be very scary for children's rights, both in the womb and outside the womb. It is the role of the church to speak up. And if not you, who? If not now, when? We need your help. Go to thewhiterose.life to join Christian resistance as we're rebuilding it all across America. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.